All right, good evening, everybody. This is a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cape May, New Jersey. We are here in the Cape May City Hall Auditorium. It is Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. The time is 6 o'clock. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Under the Open Public Meetings Law, notice of this meeting was sent to the Cape May County Herald and the Press of Atlantic City, and a copy of the agenda was delivered to each member of City Council and posted on the Cape May City website and Cape May City Hall Bulletin Board. Notice is hereby provided that Cape May City Council meetings are video streamed live and/or audio recorded. Live video streams are posted to the Cape May City website. The City of Cape May is not responsible if audio recording or live video streaming of a meeting is unavailable. Roll call. We have Councilmember Baldwin.
Here.
Present via telephone. Councilmember Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Mullick.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan.
Here.
Councilmember Yeager.
Here.
City Solicitor Gillenschwartz.
Here.
City Manager Vall.
Here.
Deputy City Clerk Dillon.
Here.
We have Deputy City Manager Blasco is here. Any additions or deletions to the agenda, Council?
Do we have any additions? No?
We do have that one update from the Seawall engineer. I'm not sure if you need to actually motion to have that on as a discussion or an update, but that is an addition to the agenda.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
And-
Oh, and before we start, we'll just add, Councilwoman Baldwin unfortunately has COVID, so she is with us on the phone, and we hope for her quick, speedy recovery. We'll start with the city manager update.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, ladies and gentlemen. Give you a quick update on a couple things. The Lafayette Street Park, I know you've been working on that, and we're waiting for the last permit. That was never applied in the past administration. If it was, we'd probably be moving on a lot quicker. The CAFR permit that was needed to start that park and the new police station. Kiwanis Park and the advertising for bids tonight. The public and council had a presentation in the past. The only change was the walk around the pond. Public address system for the promenade, the bids are due in tomorrow. That's to expand the public address system all along the promenade for public safety announcements. Library renovations, I know the mayor and Lou were there today, attended, did a walkthrough of the library behind us here with the county project. That's moving along. The firehouse hopefully be completed in the next few months. They're getting the roof completed in the next couple of weeks. They'll have shingles on. Speed limit reduction signs that council had passed will be have been ordered, and they should be in soon for the time to reduce the speed sign once we can do that. We have 5 streets left for the crosswalks, and then the Sharrows will start. We're going to do proposed budget items for the 23 budget with my department directors on November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. It'll be advertised from 9 to 11. Public can attend. I want to publicly thank Fran Santora, who hosted the Garden Club Ladies and the Fire Police Luncheon, volunteer luncheon that we had at the Lemire, the Pier House. It was very nice, and I want to thank everybody that attended. That's it for now, Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. City Solicitor?
I don't have anything tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. First up, we have a presentation from Stu Farrell from the Stockton University Coastal Research Center. And if you can come right up to the table and turn the microphone on here. Thank you, Dr. Farrell.
Kimberly McKenna has agreed to join me, and we're going to kind of talk to you a little bit about the 3 projects we've been working on for the last year and a half or so. We, this spring, started the surveys of the municipal beaches at 10 different sites, again for the spring, and they surveyed today for the fall survey, and we'll finish it up tomorrow. And the joint effort with Cape May Point, West Cape May, and Cape May City for a watershed management plan, which has, among other things, CRS rating implications for a Category 4 rating, was completed at the beginning of the summer. And we are in the process of organizing a triad of the 3 communities plus the Nature Conservancy to come up with a flood mitigation plan which involves all 3 communities plus the Nature Conservancy, because they own the property into which most of the stormwater discharges from the 3 towns. And the final thing was what we call a nuisance flooding study, which we completed over the 6 months ending in May of 2022. And that is, well, nuisance flooding is kind of a media name for minor floods that occur when you have a combination of easterly winds, spring tides, and rainfall. So the easterly winds push the water hold it into the lagoons and bays. The spring tide is 1.5 to 1.75 feet higher than the normal high tide, just because of the astronomical alignment of the sun, earth, and moon. And finally, heavy rainfall has to go somewhere. And since most of the landscape is relatively flat, it has to drain into the bay shore or into the ocean directly. And if that water level is up, it doesn't go out as fast as you'd like it to. So we set up 6 sensors in the storm drain vaults tied right to the grate. The Public Works assisted us valiantly and lifted the grates. We put the sensors on the grates at Elmira Street, north and south sides, near the Cape Island Creek. And then we put a sensor each at Perry, Congress, Grant, and the one in between. I don't remember all the names, but at each one of those, where the 48-inch diameter pipeline goes from the Nature Conservancy wetlands to Cape Island Creek. And we monitor, they take readings every 4 minutes.
Dr. Farrell, do you mind if I explain that? For a lot of people don't recognize, right next to the little miniature golf course there
Okay.
on Perry Street. That's, I guess, basically was a bridge at one point.
Well,
right
there is a
on
bridge,
Perry.
sort of, yeah.
Right.
And there's an
I
antique
see
shop.
some people shaking their heads that no. And then the pipes go out in that direction toward exit 0,
Yeah.
filling station now.
Correct.
Right.
And they go, basically exit towards the end of Grant Street
Right.
into the wetlands.
Gotcha. Wrong way.
And so when we've set these things out, we found that we had, well, the records were pretty interesting. I brought some of the graphs. On January 11th and 12th, January 27th, 29th, and 30th, and March 12th, all 6 sensors showed water in the street. The volume, the depth of water and the duration is what the sensors record, because they measure just pressure. And so the more pressure, deeper the water, the more pressure is, so up goes the graph. This was Elmira North and South on January of this year. This is the elevation above 0, which was the street. So it was 1.5 feet of water in the street. The other events also followed. Here was Congress Avenue, which is the one I didn't remember. Congress Avenue had only 0.6 of a foot, and same with the other 3 sites. So what we found was that on occasion, and what were the conditions on these January dates? Well, one was a full moon, the other was a new moon, and the other thing was that on January 27th, 29th, and 30th, it rained 3.5 inches. So that had to go somewhere, and I guess it ended up somewhat in the streets. So that whole dynamic was completed. We gave it to Mr. Belasco in July, early August, and so that also is going to be integrated into this floodplain management issue. Now, Ms. McKenna will kind of bring you up to speed on what's happened on the beaches.
Great.
Hello, Mayor and council people. Kim McKenna, I'm Associate Director at the Stockton Coastal Research Center, and I work with Stu. We haven't done a study in Cape May, for Cape May proper, since 2016, May 2016. So the next one that we did was in May of 2022. So Stu wrote the report, and we've submitted the report to y'all, but I'm just going to speak from that report that was written and submitted to you this past summer. We surveyed 10 sites of your beaches, from the Nature Conservancy property east to the beach club. And we do these surveys so that we can monitor shoreline changes as well as the volume changes. And we look at the volume changes of your dunes and your beaches, as well as what's happening in the nearshore bars. That's a very important location where the waves break, because there's a lot of sand that's moving around, and that sand gets moved and pushed up onto the beaches. So what we found from the study from May of 2016 to May of 2022, your beaches and dunes look great. They all gained volume. They gained elevation in the dunes as well as width. But this can be contributed or attributed to the beach fills by the Corps of Engineers.
Right.
So what we're going to do with this changes from May 2022 to today and tomorrow, we're going to look at how that has changed over the next 6 months. So this is something that we've been doing every 6 months. We've been doing these studies in the way past, and we'd like to continue to do that just to monitor.
That's great.
We get beach slope information out of this, and we can essentially isolate what changes occur in any given segment of the shoreline from the reference, which is behind well, it's actually at Beach Avenue. And so the reference point is essentially the curb of Beach Avenue. We go over the rocks and then across the dunes, onto the dry beach, down to the water's edge, and then we go swimming for about 800 feet out from the water's edge. So the profile ends in about 12 to 15 feet of water, depending on the day. And that deals with about 95% of the coastal changes. That last 5% really happens when you have major storms, move sand further out in water depths of 10 to 15 feet. And most of that sand actually is lost to the system because the subsequent recovery time when the waves push the sand back, as Kim mentioned, they just don't reach that deep of water to move quantities of sand landward. But after the Ian event, up and down the Cape May County shoreline from Atlantic City, actually in Atlantic County south, we saw vast offshore bars developed almost within a week of the storm ending. And this was kind of interesting because they lost, well, Avalon's engineered beach, which is jetty to 35th Street, lost 96,000 cubic yards of sand from the beaches and dunes. Stone Harbor lost even more because they got pretty badly whacked. But the sand is actually sitting offshore because offshore the sand change in Avalon was nothing. It's 2,000 yards over a mile. That's like 10 truckloads. So that's where it went. And it will migrate landward back towards the beach if there are no subsequent storms.
We need a calm winter.
You need a calm period of time of at least 6 weeks for recovery to occur to set you up for the next minor to moderate northeaster.
Yeah, I just have a question, because it sounds like, that's normal for the sand to come in and go out throughout the season.
Correct.
So I guess when you look at every 6 months, you're looking at it, are you doing like the same time every 6 months? Because to me, it would be dependent on if it was September versus June on where the sand is located.
Right, and what we do for the state, the NJBPN, New Jersey Beach Profile Network, is we go out in the spring and we go out in the fall. That way, in the spring, we look at what we call the deflated beaches, the winter beaches. And in the fall, we look at the summer beaches. And that's what we're reproducing here. So that we can see we stay with the relative same month, and on both ends, both on the
Right,
spring
yeah.
and in the fall, so that we have, relatively same conditions.
Yeah, there's no standard time you could pick. I mean, October 15th of 2021 is definitely going to have something that happened before it that may not be the same in October 15th of 2022 or in October 15th of 2023. So the preceding 10 days often sets the stage for what you would get if you went back at the same day every season to do your survey. So really, you can only say, we're doing it seasonally, and Mother Nature designs what happens between the waves, the type of waves, and the wind direction and the intensity thereof of all three. So that's what really controls the situation.
One thing that came out of this research, and of course the city knows this, but as we're doing some of this research, we really looked at these pipes that are going into the Nature Conservancy, and we had a really productive phone call the other day with Carol Sabo, Mayor Sabo from West Cape May, and the gentleman from the Nature Conservancy, Mr.
Oh, yeah.
No, right?
No, Mr. No.
NOE, Dr. No.
NOE, yeah.
But had a really good conversation about making sure that those pipes are clear, because apparently right now, they actually sit, the pipes where they end are just in mud, right? So now we'll be looking at
Excavating.
clearing that out,
Cleaning them out, yes.
doing it through the DP and everything, of course, but getting it back to a usable, serviceable pipe, which, and that is connected to Elmira Street, basically, and so potentially could help with the flooding down there as well.
Well, yeah, the open, the open tidal creek goes all the way to basically Perry, there at the miniature golf course,
Right.
where the pipe begins. So anything that happens in the environment with tidal surge or, storm flooding is going to come up Cape Island Creek. It just has to. And that you're just going to have to live with occasional street flooding at where Elmira crossed. I know it's been closed most of the summer for, are you raising the street elevation, or are you just doing a complete engineering change on the drainage and associated with the electrical station? I don't,
Nothing planned yet, really. That closing's been for the electrical substation upgrade.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that had nothing to do with the roadway itself?
Are you
Okay.
suggesting something?
No, I just go to the beach from Cape May Point all summer long, and I had to go around.
Mayor, as a result of the nuisance flooding study that was done, as well as observations from the neighborhood, when Manager Vole and I reviewed this report with Director Przinski, we realized that the pump at Elmira Street had been inoperable. They have since reconnected electric to the pump and are waiting on municipal maintenance to come and rehabilitate the pump to get it operational again. That, coupled with the clearing that the Nature Center is going to do, should greatly alleviate some of the nuisance flooding that we experienced down on Elmira Street. It won't cure everything, but it will cure the small instances and hasten the evacuation of the water.
Yeah, that's great. I know people have been asking about that pump for some years, so to get that back going up is great.
So we're, the pipes the areas that you were checking where we had a couple more than a foot of water, are all of our lines cleared? Was that, ascertained before you guys did your studies?
We started basically cold. I mean, nothing that I know of had been done unless it happened previously, and Public Works would be the only ones that could answer that one. We started in November of 2021
Right.
and wrapped up in early May of 2022. So the meeting we had a week and a half ago,
To answer that question, Councilman Yeager, our Public Works Department has a routine of clearing out these storm drains. And we didn't want to do anything out of the ordinary leading up to this study, because we felt it would be more useful for it to be normal ops.
Yeah, okay, absolutely, that makes sense.
Can I ask a question about that, Dr. Farrell? Would you, say we were to clean out some of those pipes that you studied, would you be able to notice a difference on the timing to evacuate water?
the biggest thing that would affect, the flow rate would increase because the
Okay.
pipe was clear. You're going to see a much shorter duration of water in the street than
So
you
you
did
should
previously.
be able to measure that.
And perhaps a lower total depth
be
also,
interesting.
because it would go out faster.
Right.
I mean, some of the durations were in the order of 16 hours of water above the level of the grate.
Right.
Now, it may have only been 4/10 of a foot, but still, it's there. And 4/10 of a foot's not going to create that much of a, quote, nuisance, but it's still water in the curb line that's going to sit there.
And I just have one more question, because I'm not real familiar with exactly what we've done in Cape May for beach replenishment, what the Army Corps has done. And, I mean, I have a general idea, but what I'm curious about is the fact that you said that the dune sizes have in fact increased in both height and whatever,
In volume,
depth and
right.
in volume.
Yeah.
Is that a natural outcome of
It could-
beach replenishment, wind blowing, or
It could
was
be,
that
but
done?
it's right at the base of the dunes. That's where you would see,
Okay.
or if you put out sand fencing or, you
Right,
know,
right.
then that would trap some of the sand. That's where you see most of the accumulation.
Okay.
The Corps has what they call design template. When they do a project, it's a certain elevation for the dune height as well as the beach or berm height.
Yeah, and then, once you have that wider berm, which is usually 150 to 200 feet wider than it was originally, then the wind blows across it, and easterly winds, southeast or northeast winds will blow sand into the dune field where the fences or grass trap it. And so that, it's a very slow process of building the dunes, but this this beach fill, back in my wild and misspent youth, I surveyed at Baltimore Avenue, and I literally jumped off the rocks into the water, at low tide. So that was the early profiles at Baltimore Avenue. Now it's about 360 feet to the high tide line. And so obviously sand will accumulate into a dune where it's possible to do so.
What year was that?
1989.
Okay.
1989 was the first, it was actually the first of the new modern federal, put out by the WRDA bill that's passed by Congress, Water Resources Development Act, where they funded the Corps through the congressional appropriation to do coastal beach nourishment in the coastal states and Great Lakes. So that's where it started, with up there by the Coast Guard base, and worked their way south to the Cove. And we were profiling as of 1986, so that's why we know what it was like beforehand. And then at the Nature Conservancy, the state built a gravel core dune to keep any storm went right into the wetlands and flooded Cape May Point and West Cape May and other things. So they built a gravel core dune, which is now so far in the backfield that nobody would actually know it was there anymore. But it's huge growth of beach and sand in front. Most of that, of course, came from Cape May, and that's why they have to replenish up north. They last did it in 2019, I believe. And in 2021, they hauled sand from the Nature Conservancy and the state park back north to the Cove.
I have a question. Some of my bigger concerns is the slope. Could you discuss some of the changes, if any, to the slope within the last 8 years?
Well, they actually, in that survey, since I was looking at it, in May of 2022, the beach slope was actually quite gentle because you had two northeasters, the Mother's Day storm, which lasted 2 days, and then a week later there was another storm. Not a very strong one, but it ended up flattening the beach and dragging sand offshore. Then all summer long, the beach face got a little steeper and a little steeper. I was there 3 days of every week, so all summer long, at Pittsburgh Avenue. And so we walked the beach all the way down to the convention center and back. So I got to see everything pretty much, not every square foot of it, but it was gradually steepening. And what happens is high tide pushes the wave run up, goes beyond high tide, pushes the sand up and leaves it. And then you end up with a berm that gets steeper and higher through accretion. And then you'll get a series of bigger waves or something, and it'll flatten it out again a little bit. So the beach slope is triggered mostly by the grain size of the material. And the grain size at Cape May, the material they acquired and put on the beach, is coarser than the sand that's on Wildwood's beaches.
Right.
Considerably coarser. So it's going to sit at a steeper angle than Wildwood Crest or Wildwood. That's really, their sand is like a quarter of a millimeter in size, average, and yours is closer to a half a millimeter in size. That makes a fairly big difference in the angle at which it sits.
Yeah. Now,
Does-
basing on Shane's comment about the slope, a lot of our slope that people are concerned about is actually in the water. You know what I'm saying? So that's where you see the rougher waves come, not so much on the beach, but they develop in the ocean and they break hard.
Well, there's a thing called, the coastal types call it a step. Right at the base of normal low tide, there'll be a 1.5-foot drop, and then it goes pretty flat after that. And that's where all the shells are and everything else. That's just a function of the fact that your waves are coming in and breaking right there. And, you know, if they don't spread out over a, you know, say 100 feet of shoreline going forward as the wave rolls in, they don't spread the sand out smoothly. They sort of create this step off. And
there's-
people have to just be aware of
And
it.
there's nothing that we can do to change it, because it was never like that until we started the replenishment, and then we started
It's again
getting.
the factor of the coarser sand.
Right.
And the fact that there's a lot of it.
Now, is there any way, because since it's pumped in, and I know you understand about the coarser sand versus the fine sand that Cape May used to have years ago, that we can get that finer sand pumped in?
Well,
Depends on the source.
well,
I
the
mean,
source
that's-
has been set after a painfully long 10-year period of haggling with the Fish and Wildlife Service, the historical wrecks that are out there, the cables and other infrastructure that runs across the continental shelf, and then the shell fisheries, all the sea clams. All of these groups have fiefdoms that, you know, and so it seems like there's an awful lot of land out there that you should be able to satisfy. Well, you can't go too far out because the cost of bringing it in becomes absurd. So they want to stay within the 3-mile limit for New Jersey. New Jersey wants that. The federal government can go out 12 miles, and they, you know, they're fine because that's the 12-mile limit is mineral rights. And we did lay claim. Some states lay claim to mineral rights out 200 miles, Texas being one of them. And so you've got different bunches of rules in play, whether you're 3 miles out or 12 miles out or beyond that. The water gets deeper out there. At 12 miles, it's 60 feet deep at least. And so dredging in that water depth, the dredges can't reach it. So they have to work in that 3-mile, 1.5 to 3 mile distance. Unfortunately, the Delaware estuary was fed for the last 20,000 years by melting ice sheets, and that put mostly, in Cape May Point, they actually pumped in cobbles. In the very first beach fill in Cape May Point, there were actually cobbles. And, you know, everybody was completely wigged out by this being deposited on the beach. Well, it turned out to be armor offshore. Once cobbles got embedded offshore, the shoreline stopped eroding. And everybody said, wow, that's amazing. So, and basically the cobbles are still there, but barnacles are growing on them now. So they're not moving around. And as a result, this has been a much more stable shoreline than it was in the 1990s.
So there isn't anything that, unless we change and make it naturally to come in, to get rid of that,
Could get a lot
ste-
of
that,
sand.
that
You could get
step.
a lot of new sand if we took away the Cold Springs Inlet jetties.
Right.
Got rid of them.
Yeah, we know
Well,
that.
that's what happened until 1907.
I see our harbor master is laughing at that one.
Bypass
Beach-
sand
Well,
too,
you could-
do it like they do in Delaware.
The Corps
Right,
has
but
looked
even in
at it.
Florida, I know
Right.
they have some underneath.
Yeah.
They
go
looked
underneath
at
the
this. Back in 1983, I worked at Philadelphia for a year, and that was one of the projects they were talking about, bypassing sand across that inlet onto the, this is before the 1989 beach fill. And I guess the beach fill took cost-effective precedence over a bypassing plan.
Yeah, because I think a lot of our beach safety issues has to do with that, what you call that step down, and how rough those waves break.
Oh, yeah.
At the
Yeah, when
shoreline.
they're 3 to 5 feet high, yeah, you have to watch what you're doing, yeah.
But does laying the finer sand, if we would replenish with fine sand over top of the coarse sand, does it fix the problem or?
May not last as long.
Well, it may not-
Because
yeah.
then it's, you
Right.
have the combination of the waves impacting the fine sand, which
Yes.
can, bring it up and then move
And
it down.
expose the coarse, yeah.
If you go
So-
offshore in Wildwood or North Wildwood, it's like 12 feet deep, 1,000 feet from the beach. And it's really fine sand. Oh, and it just keeps going. I mean, we use a boat to profile whale offshore out there, and it's like, holy mackerel, it just keeps on going. And that's why. There's just so much sand in that whole stretch because of the jetties and then Turtle Gut Inlet closed up, and so all that sand around the inlet's all now on the beaches. The other thing is, as far as pumping it over, I don't think you get the wildlife refuge to even think about letting you take the sand from their side of the jetty and pumping it over. I think that would be,
But what, and you had mentioned it, and we had talked just briefly, just a little while ago here, about a pipe underneath the jetty
Yeah.
to allow the natural flow of sand from Wildwood into Cape May, which would, for wildlife, it would increase the beaches there for more wildlife to inhabit. You would think it would be a benefit to both.
I mean, it might be something that you could bring up to the DEP and the Corps when they do the next beach fill, they can look at that. The Corps collects their own data on the beaches too. That might be an ask that maybe it might be easier for them to address it.
I know one issue is the donor sites becoming, further out and fewer in between, really.
Right.
But I think, this study is a good start in that conversation, for sure.
well, the offshore sand supply is, being exploited quite severely. And then, of course, if you have to expand it, there's always going to be somebody, oh, that's shell fisheries. You can't have that. Or there's a wreck from 1812 sitting in that.
Right.
And they draw these 1,000-foot circles around these wrecks that, untouchable.
But it is the Corps of Engineers that's responsible for looking for that sand. So
Yes.
you, working with the DP, you could request, hey, can we look for sand that maybe is finer grained? Maybe it's a little bit farther away from the current borough area, but it's worth the ask just to
And
change.
your
Yeah,
project.
can we trade our sand with anybody?
Well, maybe, but I don't think so.
But Stone Harbor, so what are they?
Well,
they're gonna end
they're
up
in there,
with-
right now, they're in a deep doo-doo because of the fact that the CBRA, Coastal Barrier Resources Act, has been reinterpreted by young lawyers as you can't take the sand from Hartford Inlet outside of the CBRA unit. It was okay up until 2013 to do that. Now it's not. And so now Stone Harbor has no source of sand. They have to find a no one. And that's, they're going to take it from Townsend's Inlet all the way to Stone Harbor this fall. That's 2 dredges. And that's so expensive, like $6 million more. And, but, that's all part of it. And, it's something that we constantly are dealing with, this whole operation of everything is, there are whole bunches of moving parts to it, and that's the biggest problem. You could get the sand if, in fact, there was a way to get it around the Cold Spring Inlet jetties, cost effectively. But that was, I know they studied it for Manasquan Inlet, for Barnegat Inlet, and for Cold Springs Inlet. And even in Seacon Inlet, they looked at it for Brigantine. Brigantine Beach grew wider by almost 1,000 feet because of the jetty. And the same thing's true up there. Cressy Avenue in Wildwood is 800 feet wider than it was in 1986.
Wow.
It's beyond the pier.
True.
Well, Dr. Farrell and Professor McKenna, it's valuable information to start with, and we really appreciate it. And already, I think that conversation with West Cape May and the Nature Conservancy is
That's underway.
showing fruition already. So,
Underway, and I think we're having another one shortly, aren't we?
We're meeting down there Thursday,
This Thursday.
yeah.
You have it on your calendar, right? All right. All right, thank
Okay,
you,
thank you very
thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And next on the agenda, actually, as an addition to the agenda, we have Collier's Engineers with us this evening for an update on the seawall. Thank you, gentlemen, we appreciate it. This is a hot topic this evening.
Yes, we're here to present, we were retained by the city to, as design engineers, to improve your seawall, to make it more fortified for future.
If you wouldn't mind picking up the microphone and speaking into that, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
We're brought on board to to study your seawall and to fortify it, make it stronger for future storm protection. So we put together a nice package for you, and Ian Walzak, our project manager for the job, is going to go through and present it to you. And I'm Richard Maloney. I'm the principal in charge of the project.
Sweet. How you doing? As Rich said, I'm Ian Walzak, Senior Structural Engineer at Collier's Engineering Design. Thanks for having us tonight. Excited to be a part of this project. It sounds like Stockton really took care of maybe the inland flooding and the beach profile. This complements that really well, I believe, and we're gonna take care of, the seawall issues that we're gonna discuss tonight. Some of the history. You took half of my presentation, I will have to say. I was gonna hit on some of the old history of the Corps and the installation of the jetty and how that caused sand starvation in this area. And that's leading to the beach erosion along Beach Ave and the corner there at Wilmington and Beach Ave. So you did kind of a great job. I guess I can add a little bit more to that. They did.
He will correct you if you say something.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to tread lightly. You definitely have a. So I will tread lightly. But in 1981, the DEP put together the New Jersey Shore Protection Master Plan, where they laid out that plan basically for what they designated this area of Cape May as Reach 14, which was from Cape May Inlet to Cape May Point. And they basically said in that master plan that they knew the installation of the jetties caused sand starvation, which then they knew they had to construct new groins, a seawall, and do periodic beach nourishment. So just to add on to that a little bit. So just before we start, I guess the previous administration, a couple of years back, had kind of started the groundwork of this project for us. They worked with another engineering firm, Mott McDonald, and I know Mayor just wanted us to hint on kind of where we started and how far we've come and kind of building on that. You don't have that right now, but I'll just show for everyone. So originally they had their concept, right? Just an overview.
And sir, I'm sorry, you will have to
Oh,
speak into
okay.
the microphone
Yeah,
so they can hear you at home. You can move it, though.
Yeah,
Thank
maybe.
you.
I'm a little bit animated, I apologize in advance. But just as a general overview, right, we're gonna basically increase the flood resilience of Cape May, right? We're trying to stop those big sandy storms and catastrophic coastal flooding from happening in the future. Right now, the seawall sits at an elevation roughly 8.5 to 9.5 above NAVD 88, which that doesn't really compute. Like the road is about 5.5, so you can judge it based off that. Our seawall, we're trying to get an elevation 15, but just to backtrack.
Did you say road is 5.5? Is that
Around,
about,
yeah,
roughly?
plus or minus. It varies between 5 to 6,
Thank
but
you.
around 5.5. But as I said before, this is kind of continuing on from the prior administration's efforts on kind of revamping and increasing the resiliency. Mott McDonald put together some concept maps and concept cross-sections of the seawall. As you can see, well, you don't have this file, but basically they had their seawall either adding armor stone or driving piles, and some of them were maybe not the most cost-effective approach. So we just tried to kind of hammer down and value engineer and try to come up with the most cost-effective approach that's not only technically feasible, but financially feasible for the city to really revamp this seawall. So just to jump into some of the renderings, or if you actually flip to the last page for me, please. I'm going to start from the back, and I'm doing things backwards. So the last page is a cross-section of the proposed seawall. As you can see, the existing seawall is in that little grayer line weight. Yeah, we'll show them a little bit. In the grayer line weight. So the top of that is roughly 15 feet wide, plus or minus, and like I said, 8.5 to 9.5. Right now, FEMA firm maps has the flood elevation at VE elevation 11. So when a big storm comes in, as you've known historically, you get coastal flooding and overtopping of the existing seawall. Now, the Army Corps has a project right now at the corner of Wilmington and Beach Avenue that they're proposing to increase the height of the seawall. We do plan, and we are coordinating with the Army Corps and DEP on our seawall so we can make sure both stretches come together and tie in nicely. Their section is roughly 500 plus or minus feet, and ours is going to be roughly 4,500 plus or minus feet. They're proposing to be at elevation 17, as I said. We're proposing to be at elevation 15, and that number comes based off actually their own feasibility report, which they said all elevations above 15, elevation 15, 16, and 17, are cost-effective and will reduce flooding. So, just to get into the design a little bit, what we propose is very similar to the Army Corps. We just are trying to incorporate more of a recreational use as well. So not only shore protection to make sure we protect the homes from coastal flooding, but also to provide the city and the tourism industry kind of an extension of the promenade that you guys already have. So what we propose is a concrete cap on top. We want to do roughly a 20-foot wide, 18 to 20-foot wide walk on top with a seating wall up to the right. And so that's the cross-section. If you go back to the front, these are conceptual renderings of the existing and then proposed. So these are like the same view, a shot today, what existing is, and what the proposed condition of the seawall will look like. So as you can see in this first view one, existing conditions, you can see the existing 1905 timber bulkhead. So the ocean used to actually abut right up to that timber bulkhead, and there was a timber promenade on the ocean side that ran along. And then the 1962 Ash Wednesday storm destroyed that, and then that's when they came in and built the existing seawall that we see today. And then in 1991, the Army Corps came in with the beach replenishment, put in a dune system, and
Just for some of the folks listening, when you say seawall, it's basically the jetty rock. That's a lot of it's covered by dunes and sand, but that was built as a seawall.
Correct, yeah. So after the 62 storm, that jetty wall was put in place, and again, the ocean used to butt and slam right up to that seawall with the Army armor stone and the jetty stone.
Did you say that wooden bulkhead was built in 1905?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, it's still hanging on.
And was the only protection at that time.
Yeah, that was the only protection at that time, and then they got wiped out by a storm, and we're like, oh, we should increase the resiliency here.
Yeah, because that's actually the county road. They should be responsible for paying for
Correct.
that.
Yes.
And I
Wall.
believe,
Well, go on.
yeah, I believe that the county does plan on replacing that bulkhead, and that will be coordinated with our stretch of the project as well.
Yeah, we're going to meet with the county to have those discussions.
Just so,
Yeah.
Now, real quick, this rendering that you have here, right there.
yeah.
Now,
Could you face that to the?
yeah, Kusin,
Yeah, just the rendering, it's just so you can kind of see.
is that to scale?
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't call it survey quality, but it roughly.
I'm not,
Scale.
I want to be like
Yeah.
you show us one thing, and then we go there, and it's like,
No,
20 feet higher, then we're like, uh-oh, this is
No,
what
so
we
if you-
purchased.
No. If you flip from existing to proposed, you can see how the timber bulkhead raises roughly a foot, and then.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, it's to scale, yeah.
intention of that was to show you guys how it was done.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Ian's a master with the SketchUp and the AutoCAD.
Yeah.
He's able to actually-
I mean, that's great, because a lot of times, people do renderings, and they make the people bigger,
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I like the fact that,
I actually, yeah, we left off the people for
they
now.
make,
just-
12-foot high people.
Sketch is extremely accurate.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
very, very accurate, yes.
Now, my other question is, I was on the committee with Mott McDonald and when they were doing
Oh,
the other
great.
seawalls, and there was a committee out there that was looking at the seawall. And you have 17 feet and 15 feet elevation. I know they weren't going to go that high.
They-
They were only going to go, and don't hold me to the number exactly, but I thought it was around 11 to 13 maybe, or?
So we actually, coincidentally, on our kickoff meeting, when we walked the whole run of the seawall, we ran into Jim Testa, which are apparently, and Scott
Yes.
M. I
Yes.
forgot his last name, I apologize. But I guess they were a part of that seawall committee, and they actually sent us the letter of the recommendation letters. And they actually said they were okay with going up to 15 feet. So that also, not only did we get to 15 feet independently, just based off of our projections for sea level rise over the next 50 years, but they had, and they were very practical. They understood the need to raise the seawall, right? They don't want their
Well,
homes.
but
to flood it out.
actually, by your rendering, it doesn't look overwhelming. That's why I wanted to make sure
Correct.
that we weren't getting.
Yeah.
Now, we also had, during this meeting, we had a lot of meetings, and, it seemed like Groundhog Day, because we kept going back to the same thing every week.
Oh, yeah.
But my question was with the HPC, because we had the HPC involved, because there has to be approval
Yes.
for this seawall.
I-
But this seawall is a lot simpler
100%.
and softer than the whole concrete wall that was going to be
Exactly.
Yeah,
proposed
and that was
before.
one of our main objectives, is to really make this beautiful, right? This is a historic city, and, yeah, if you have a comment.
And I just think I have to comment that the design is so much more simple and nice than what previously really was a block wall on the road, basically.
Yeah.
It was like,
And the biggest argument we had then was, should this block wall be covered in like thin brick, or should it be like a fieldstone look? And-
but not only the wall, but then they
Right.
had like, well, we had the wall, and then we had a wall on top of the wall,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
it was.
Yeah, and that was like the separate elevated
the
bicycle. and-
Yeah, so that if you're actually on the one side, you couldn't see the ocean anyway, because there's a
Yeah.
4-foot wall there
Yeah,
between
yeah. That
you and the
is-
bikes, which was, so it
And what,
looks,
and what I like about this too is the highest portion of the wall is on the ocean side. So your line of sight, just for the public, think of a 6-foot wall right in front of you is a 6-foot wall. A 6-foot wall 35 feet away from you is, your line of sight is much, much better. And I like the fact that the wall itself is used as a little seating.
Yes.
With a backrest, so nobody's falling backwards,
Yeah.
but.
and how high is that?
So the main walkway that you don't even see here, which is kind of the intent, is around elevation 12 and a half. And then we have, as Mayor Zach said, the seating wall, which is going to be pushed back on the ocean side, is going to be up to elevation 15. But there'll be a seat, and then there'll be an extension on the back to get to the desired flood resilience elevation, which we're going with 15. But as you said, this is really just not only a really sound structural design, because now, if you think just rationally, if you have a block of concrete really thin, or you have one really wide, it distributes the load better, you have a lower center of gravity, it's better structural design. But also now we're able to incorporate nature-based solutions, which are these vegetated dune slopes. When you walk down the road, you really just see what we propose to do is a new timber bulkhead to kind of pay homage for the Historic Preservation Society, pay homage to the existing 1905 timber bulkhead, come up with a vegetated slope, hide the main bulk of the new seawall, and then just in the back have the seating wall to get to that.
Now, my question has to do with the walkway. Are we keeping, because there's a lot of rocks there, are we
Correct.
keeping a lot of those rocks still there?
Yes, yeah, so
So I think that adds stability to,
100%, yeah, 100%.
You flip to the last page.
Yeah, that last page shows the cross-section. So the existing seawall, we don't plan to touch. Getting into a little bit of the nitty-gritty, we obviously have to clean off the top and prep the stone for new cap placement, but that existing seawall has stand the test of time, right? The ocean used to hit right up against the seawall, so we know it's sound, and that's why we propose just to go right on top of that seawall. Similar in the fact that the Army Corps is also going right on top of the existing seawall, although their design isn't the same as ours. We're going to coordinate and make sure.
Well, it might be the same if we can.
That'd
Well,
be-
we should talk about
Yeah.
that.
Look at me. This is.
Would you talk about the Army Corps compared to this?
Yeah, so the Army Corps right now is at 17, which I think it's justifiable at the corner. If, you know, if they really push back and say they don't want to go to 15, I think.
And just for the public, because you know this, but it's 17 at its peak and then
And then comes down.
slopes down to
Yeah.
15, is that right?
Well,
They're sloped even lower.
It's sloped all the way down to the existing elevation of the seawall right now.
Okay.
Because they only proposed to build about a 550-foot, roughly, stretch at the corner.
But are they going both directions? Are they coming down
so they're-
Beach and they're going down,
Wilmington.
Wilmington?
Yeah, so they're
Yes.
going around the corner and then
So-
sloping down to Wilmington,
okay.
sloping down to.
Sloping down
Beach Avenue.
Beach, okay.
So if they don't decide to work with us, which I think they will, there's no reason why they wouldn't. We would have to, you know, come up with a design to tie into their wall. But I think this is not only structurally a better solution, but just aesthetically a better solution, and just to provide the community really a sense of pride that they could walk down. And again, just to pay homage, the existing early 1900s promenade, right? It's kind of bringing it full circle.
And
They're up to elevation 17.
Right.
And their street side of their wall is just straight down, I believe, 6
Yeah.
feet.
It's a wall.
Yeah, yeah. It's literally a concrete wall.
Well,
And I don't know if that has ever been approved by the HPC.
it hasn't.
No, so that's
Yeah,
why
I
they're
would-
still.
yeah, I would say.
So,
it hasn't.
and I think considering the fact that they are still building off of the existing seawall, which is the same design that you're using, I think we should make a good push to incorporate something
Yeah.
at least similar to this.
How much higher, like, you have the wall that's there now, right? Which, is the base going to be on top of that? Is it like a foot?
So the existing wall's about 8.5, we're gonna go to 12.5, so roughly 3 to 4, it varies. So about 3 to 4 foot thick concrete cap, and then we're gonna come up the extra to get to 15 with the cedar. So an extra 29 inches, I believe, is the exact number.
So the drawings, this is concrete.
Correct, all concrete.
The drawings look like they're dark.
So this is definitely a design, right now we're preliminary, but this is going to be a design option, potentially stain the concrete darker. You could put coloring in the concrete to make it look more like a jetty rock or something of that nature. Yeah.
We just need to be sure it doesn't burn your feet.
That is a very good point.
We just painted a section of the promenade now
But the-
that was redone.
Yeah, but that's different. That was blacktop.
I know.
That was
That is
black
And this
top.
is going to be
Yeah.
concrete.
I'm just giving him a.
But you do bring up a very good point.
Yeah.
Blacktop, even
I mean-
stained concrete could get very hot.
There might be the right color that's temperature.
Yeah. Or we
nude.
could
Well-
just go with normal concrete as well and walking on the sidewalk. I grew up in a beach town. I always was okay on the sidewalk. And you jump on, you have to hit the white stripes, you know?
right.
Yeah. We'll put a white stripe down for people.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, because, like you're saying with the color here, but at the same time, or the sand's white, so what is the best color?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just putting it out there, because it looks like your sand here looks a little browner
Yeah.
than our sand. We have white sand.
Yeah, yep.
Sunset color.
Yeah, very
Well, actually, the whole promenade it's macadam, whatever you want to call it, but it's grayish in color.
yeah. The existing, yeah.
You know, maybe there's something that can look like that you can do in concrete.
Definitely.
I'm glad you put up the material because that was on my mind as well. My concern is there a way you can design some kind of electrical conduit we can put along this baby? And, because on this side of town, if you see the promenade, we have the light poles and the wires that go across it, and sometimes you see the kites that get caught up in there. It's just not
Yeah,
aesthetically
yeah.
pleasing. And I think if you had the electrical unit, we could later on put some lighting up there, or even the beach announcement systems, you know.
Okay.
Moving forward.
I can't see why we can't embed a conduit so you could do a feeder line all the way through, yeah.
'Cause, you know, there's
I know
going to be a
we
need for it,
discussed
but we're not
lighting
going
a
to know
little
when or
bit,
how.
and we thought not to put lighting as of right now, just because the residents, you know, maybe not want to be so lit, but any lighting, maybe bollard, down lighting, so, you know, you light up the path itself. But that is an excellent point, we should
Now,
incorporate that.
I know we might not have it in the spot. We are putting in there access from the street, right?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. I actually forgot. So we propose to put ADA ramps at all locations. Right now, you have a couple, I think 3. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, if you, thank you, Rich.
I think all of them are.
The down,
Couple steps.
yeah.
Oh,
there's-
down that end.
Yeah,
I'm
at the
talking
end,
about
there's
the
a couple that are
Yeah.
only steps.
Right.
And we discussed, and we said, might as well make them ADA, so every beach access point will be ADA compliant. Also, to that point, we propose to redo the rinse stations, add bike racks, trash receptacles, just normal beach entrance amenities, to make sure, you know, bring it up to modern and really give the town an uplift.
Is this design, is there a sloping design taking the water towards the street, I assume? It goes
So-
up the vegetational
Correct,
area?
yeah, so we actually propose it to drain towards the ocean, so it doesn't cause any type of overflow to the pumping station.
Okay, cool.
And that'll be done by the use of scuppers in the seating wall, so little slots at the bottom seating wall, will gradually slope the whole cap to the ocean, so it just flows out. When rain hits, it'll flows out. And in the event of a coastal flooding, if any water does eventually this is in the Save All, it's going to dramatically decrease the coastal flooding. But if any water does get in, either from the back bay or what have you, hopefully the pumping stations will be adequate to get it through the system. And there's also outfalls that run along Beach Avenue. There's inlets, so that'll.
Okay, I'm going to ask the tough question now.
Okay.
What is the cost? Estimate cost?
Okay. So we haven't gotten to the point, this is really high-level conceptual. We haven't really did a cost estimate, to be completely honest with you. So
Okay.
I don't have a cost right now.
I mean, to be honest with you, this looks a lot less,
Simple, simpler.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cost-wise,
It's
because
very-
you're
yeah.
leaving the rocks that are there, you're just putting on top of it.
Yes. Yeah, so it's really just, you get a good contractor in there, do modular forms, you come in, pour a section, and just be on your way. But we haven't sat down, honestly, and did a hard number just yet. We're not at that. I don't think, this is a very high-level concept. So that'd be the next steps,
Well,
definitely.
if I hadn't asked the question, somebody would have said, why didn't you ask?
Yeah.
Now, one thing too to highlight, because I thought this was a neat little design, was by the handicap ramps. If you look at this SO2, well, actually, really even, or
the
O3,
next one?
which are, you see the little bike rack bump ins?
Oh, okay.
I just thought that was a neat little detail where it bumps it off of the street and into like a little recessed cubby, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's next to your handicap access.
Yep.
Yeah, do the space between the walkway and the bulkhead just in the street.
Right.
Could become that ramp that you drop in.
Because right now, as most people know in Cape May, we have the temporary bike rack right on the street.
Yeah.
Which, it's wide enough street that it works, but
Yeah.
obviously, putting this into the design makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what are the drawbacks of doing something like this in pieces?
Drawbacks.
I mean, like phases?
In
like-
phase-
What I mean in
One.
phases, yeah.
So-
we have 4,500 feet?
Yeah, so we discussed possibly 3 phases. I would definitely suggest to start down by the corner. That's the most vulnerable area. The beach is the smallest there.
And the Army Corps will supposedly be done by then, or at least
Yeah.
want to be in
Design
process?
at
of
least,
the
yeah.
same-
So
okay.
we actually tentatively have a meeting with the Army Corps tomorrow, but that's not on the books yet. We're still waiting on a confirmation. But
Okay.
within the end of this week, hopefully, we'll have a really good sit-down with the Army Corps, and so we can both get on the same page, so both these projects really just seamlessly
Yeah.
come together.
I mean,
There's a downside to doing it in stages.
No, yeah.
I mean, right now, you have nothing, so you're just going to improve, say, a third of it. There's nothing wrong with doing the other 2/3 the way it is today.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have an issue with it, but I would like the HPC to take a look at it so that we could get
Yeah, we would
Before
love
we
their
get too
buy-in.
far down the track.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, yeah.
And I guess it hasn't been mentioned, we are going to attempt to go after FEMA funding for a brick. And one of the grading criteria is community input, right? So Historic Preservation Society is definitely a historic community society. That'd be good points, and not only good points, but we want to make them happy as well, right? The whole city is a historic city, so this has to be perfect, in my opinion.
And you'll see those resolutions later on in the agenda.
Little foreshadow. So I think that's about it that we have, unless there's further
Any other questions, council?
Gentlemen, could I just ask, as you can see, there is some public interest in what you just showed us. Could you send this to me electronically in case anybody wants to see a copy of it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get you my information. If anybody wants a copy, just shoot me an email or give me a call, okay?
And any input, too.
That's great.
Definitely give me a vibe.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you,
job.
Council.
Thank you.
Great work.
I'm going to maybe
You guys could all keep
hand a
those.
couple of these out and then get them back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to see a couple of
I think
these.
they all sold.
Oh, I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah.
They already took the extras, and let me tell you, this was very,
Yeah, good. And yeah. I also just mentioned that what we were just saying is there also used to be big steel sheet metal basically going through the granite stone, which I have no idea how that was ever going to actually occur. So I just think this really simplified the design.
yeah, one of the plans before had a electronic valve underneath, letting water in, letting it out.
Right, everything.
It was, yeah, this,
Yeah. Okay. Move on to ordinance. Yeah, please. Thank you. Okay, we'll move into the ordinances for introduction, clerk.
Yes, Mayor. We have 483-2022, an ordinance amending Section 194 of the City Code to prohibit use of generators in connection with planned construction activities of the City of Cape May.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second.
Any questions or comments on ordinance 483? No? Roll call?
Questions or comments on ordinance 483?
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan?
yes?
Roll call. Questions or comments on ordinance?
I always think I sound
little
better than I
feedback.
do when I hear it.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we have 484-2022, an ordinance amending Section 7 of the City of Cape May Code to establish a maximum speed limit on Pearl Street in the City of Cape May.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I just want to make one comment. Again, I want to say that I think that the city speed limit should have stayed at 25, so it's consistent throughout town, instead of us having speed limits at 25 on Lafayette, Pittsburgh, Beach, and Broadway, 20 at other streets, and then 15 at other streets, and then again 10 at Yacht Avenue. I think it gets too confusing to have all these different speed limits. We should just have one and say, you know, speed limit is strictly enforced, and go from there so that everybody knows what the speed limit it is. What we're doing here is by changing all the speed limits, we're going to have to put in a ton of speed limit signs, because every street's going to have a couple of signs so that people know what the speed limit is. You can't rely on them to read the ordinance to know what streets or what speed. So that's why I'll be voting no on this ordinance.
Okay, any other comments? Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan?
No?
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
All right, next we have 485-2022, an ordinance amending Section 525 of the City of Cape May Code to provide a minimum stormwater management and grading requirements for development in the City of Cape May and regulation of nuisance-causing conditions.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second? Second. Any questions or comments on this?
Mayor, if I may, I can just give an outline of this to council and to the public because this wasn't included on the Friday packet. This is tied to, what this ordinance would do is establish minimum stormwater management and grading requirements for development in the City of Cape May. This is related, but related to Ordinance 475, which is on for second reading tonight. That's the NJDP stormwater managements for major development. You'll recall that we went back and amended the definition in there to conform to local requirements because the state definition would essentially not apply to many developments in Cape May because of the unique size of properties down here. So, but what this ordinance would do, which is on for first reading tonight, would establish minimum stormwater and drainage requirements for all development. So that this is not just, this is intended to capture all development, including those that don't go to the board, because usually when applications for variances, if you're putting a new building on that requires some sort of relief, you go to the board, you get reviewed by the board engineer, they provide comments, they look at your grading and drainage conditions, and they can determine if there's any issues with stormwater management in related to that development. Now, the problem is if somebody decides to develop a new construction, which we see a lot in town, and West Cape May experienced a similar situation, is that you get these buildings that don't have to go before the board, they're not subject to major stormwater management regulations, and then you may have nuisance flooding issues or drainage issues that are not properly directing stormwater management on this new building that may be code compliant, but is creating conditions or perhaps nuisance conditions to neighboring properties. So what this would do, and I'll point out that when I was solicitor in West Cape May in 2017, this issue popped up because there was a lot of new development, and buildings were essentially falling through the cracks because they weren't having to go before the board, and members of the public were coming and saying, hey, this new building came out, it didn't have to go to the board, we're experiencing these drainage issues, what can you do? Well, there wasn't anything on the book. So in 2017, this is largely the same model that I worked with the commissioners over there to establish in West Cape May. Anecdotally, that's worked with some success, because what it does is you have to come in with a plan at the zoning permit stage, and then you have to do a as-built, drainage plan, and in this case, a stormwater management plan. You submit an application, there's an escrow, city engineer reviews it, and then at the end, before you get your CO, you need to make sure that these conditions are met, they're complied with. So it kind of keeps everything organized, and it captures all development, not just the major. Right. So, and in addition, this would apply to all new development. There's also a public nuisance provision in here that would provide code enforcement and the zoning officer the ability to, if there is a drainage condition, if there's an existing building that is creating a nuisance condition, although it's not being developed, if you maintain that and there's probable cause to see that there is an issue there that requires it to be addressed, the zoning officer and the code enforcement officer can point to that and say, look, it appears you have a problem here, and very clearly points out in this ordinance and gives direction. By the way, you have an issue, but there's already a built-in process. If you come up with a plan to manage your stormwater, change some things around, maybe get some gutters and downspouts directing to a French drain, or that conversation can happen through this process, and they can come into compliance. So it's really a comprehensive procedure. It provides some standards in here. And based on our discussion at one of the last few meetings, I was able to speak with our planning board engineer to come up with some standards. So this has already sort of been pre-reviewed by the planning board engineer. It will, if council passes, it will go to the planning board for master plan consistency review, and we'll get perhaps some other comments on it. but just wanted to point that out, that this already has some engineering input on some of the standards in here, but that's the outline of the process, not have any properties fall through the cracks anymore.
It also was requested by the planning board as well, too. I mean, they're dealing with this issue. Many people know, just like you explained, but maybe I'll be a little bit more blunt, when they have a developer come in and do the whole house, and yeah, they don't need a variance, but tend to slope the entire yard into the neighbor's yard. This allows us to fix that situation.
Yeah, and after we vote on it tonight, then it will go to the planning board, correct? For
Yes.
review? Okay.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, roll call? Did we do motion in a second? I'm sorry.
We did. We have a
did,
motion
okay.
and a second, so Councilmember Councilmember Baldwin.
Did we have a motion in a second? Yes. Councilmember
Councilmember Meyer.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan.
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager.
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
Okay. Next, we have ordinances for second reading and consideration for adoption. We have Ordinance 475-2022, an ordinance amending Section 437 of the code to update local requirements for stormwater management to reflect amendments to the NJDEP stormwater management rules under NJAC 7:8. And there is a public hearing scheduled, Mayor.
Okay. Is anyone here to speak on ordinance 475? That's the stormwater management ordinance. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any questions or comments? Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan.
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager.
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
Next, we have 479-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 434 of the Code of the City of Cape May regarding designation of containers for recycling. And there is a public hearing, Mayor.
Is anyone here to comment on ordinance 479, correct? I'm sorry.
Yep.
On 479, this is on the recycling containers. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any questions or comments? Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan.
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager.
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
I just want to, I'm sorry, one
Please,
quick
please.
comment. I'd like to stay on top of this, and if we start seeing any injuries, that we remove it, since that's the number one comp injury is trash collection.
I agree. Okay.
Next, we have Ordinance 480-2022, an ordinance of the City of Cape May amending the revised general ordinances to provide for restricted handicap parking spaces at or adjacent to 230 Windsor Avenue for Rocco Senator and 214 North Street for George Kumaris, with a public hearing, Mayor.
Is anyone here to speak on 480 handicap car parking spaces? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Second?
Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan.
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager.
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
Finally, we have 481-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 166 of the City of Cape May City of Cape May Code regarding boats to require registration, with a public hearing.
Is anyone here to speak on 481? I see our harbor master, but no, okay. Do I have a motion on, I'm sorry, and that is about the code regarding registration of boats, 481. Do I have a motion?
I'll move. So
Second.
moved.
Any questions or comments? Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan.
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager.
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
Next, council, we have the public portion on resolutions only. If anybody wishes to publicly comment on any resolution listed on the agenda at this time.
Do we have any comment this evening for resolutions only? Seeing none, we can close public comment on resolutions only.
Council, is there anything you'd like removed from the consent agenda this evening?
Yes, I have a couple.
Okay.
The meeting minutes dated August 2nd,
Okay.
Resolution 245, 246, and 253.
Okay. Any others, council?
I'd like to just make a comment that I think the majority, or at least half of these, are grant applications, which is a great way of moving forward.
There's a number from Jim Rutala, yes. All right, well, if we're all set then, on the consent agenda this evening, we have the Cape May City Council special meeting minutes dated July 27th, 2022, Cape May City Council closed session meeting minutes dated July 27th, 2022, Cape May City Council regular meeting minutes dated August 16th, 2022, Cape May City Council work session meeting minutes dated September 6th, 2022. We've got the tax collector report for the month of July 2022, the fire incident report for the month of September 2022, the police incident report for the month of September 2022, and the Cape May County Hazard Mitigation Plan Update Progress Report for October 15th of 2021 through October 15th of 2022. For resolutions, we have 247-10-2022, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services to de Blasio and Associates for surveying and engineering services for the reconstruction of Trenton Avenue. 248-10-2022, resolution authorizing submission of an application to the Cape May County Open Spaces Historic Preservation Program for the Allen AME Church. 249-10-2022, resolution authorizing the application for the National Park Service's African American Civil Rights Grant Program. 250-10-2022, resolution approving the submission of a grant application and execution of a grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year 2022 FEMA Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program. That's the BRIC program. 251-10-2022, resolution authorizing an application for grant funding through the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program and execution of a grant agreement with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. 252-10-2022, resolution authorizing a submission of a grant application and execution of a grant agreement with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the Transportation Alternatives Set Aside Program. 254-10-2022, a resolution authorizing the city to award a contract to Sourcewell Cooperative Vendor John Deere for a backhoe loader for the Public Works and Water Sewer Departments in the amount not to exceed $159,393.70. And Resolution 255-10-2022, resolution for the payment of bills.
Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second?
Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan?
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
All right, going back to the meeting minutes, work session meeting minutes dated August 2nd, 2022.
I make a motion, Mayor?
Please. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ready for roll call?
I'm
Council?
sorry,
No,
yes,
that's fine.
sorry.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan?
Abstain?
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
We have Resolution 245-10-2022, a resolution authorizing endorsement of an application for a New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Treatment Works application. This is for Yacht Harbor Marine LLC, Block 1160, Lots 6, 6.01, and 7.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
I pulled it for a couple comments with this one, because this is an unusual thing that we're writing a letter, or a resolution authorizing this endorsement. This was approved by the zoning board, and I guess, I'm not sure if it was approved by the zoning board, why is it coming to us and not just through the zoning board, this resolution being?
This is a requirement under the administrative code for treatment works application. So this, I instructed this not to come to you until they went to zoning and got approval for the development they're proposing. But the regulations under NJAC, it's for extension of sewer. So that's why the governing body is actually required by the regulations to endorse it. Usually that process comes after they get approval for what they're seeking to do, which occurred, they went to the zoning board. And then the municipal engineer will review it to make sure that connection with the municipal sewer system is kosher, essentially, from an engineering standpoint. So this went to the zoning board, went through review with Craig, Mr. Hurlis, and has been reviewed by our city engineer, Mr. Orlando. and both provided comments on this, so that's why it was finally teed up and ready. But this is a requirement under the statute that the governing body review and approve it, essentially.
Okay, I just want to make sure, we're not approving this changes, we're only approving the sewer hookup.
That's correct, and this is just one piece of this development. This portion, because it's an extension of the sewer system, it requires the governing body to sign off. But we're not touching or addressing any of the issues that were presented to the zoning board.
Right.
But it didn't make sense for the governing body to approve a sewer connection if the development wasn't going to be approved.
Right, no, I understand that part, but I just wanted to make sure that we're not, because there's, maybe there are parking issues or any other things that it's just not.
I provided that for council's information only, and just as a reference as to what was proposed, what was approved, and this is basically verbatim from Mr. Hurlis's report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan,
Yes,
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
246-10-2022, resolution authorizing advertisement for bids for the reconstruction of Pennsylvania Avenue's Phase 5. This is from Pittsburgh to Baltimore.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments?
Yes, the reason why I pulled this one is, to be honest with you, I thought we were done from Pittsburgh to the base. I didn't realize that we weren't completed this project yet. And I guess my other question, now that I found we still have to go from Pittsburgh to Baltimore, which hasn't been done yet, is what are we going out to bid for? Is this just paving? Is it water and sewer? Because it's kind of vague, and I didn't get the specs for this going out to bid for.
Let me see here.
I believe it's just paving.
It's what?
I believe it's just paving,
Just paving?
yeah.
And this is basically the last block in the Coast Guard base of Pennsylvania Avenue. So that anyone who doesn't know, Baltimore Avenue kind of goes into the base, and then, of course, Pittsburgh is, the main road that you
Correct.
get off of. So this is the last phase of that phased project on Pennsylvania Avenue going into the base.
That was picked up by our current engineer
Right.
because it was left off by the
Yeah.
prior engineer.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I just, when it went to Phase 5, I'm like, how many more phases could it
Yeah.
possibly be? So it's just, you're saying it's just for paving then?
That's
Maybe
correct.
some
Okay.
drainage.
Not drainage. Paving's different than drainage.
The notice to bidders says
That's
drainage.
another
So
resolution. That was for drainage. This wasn't, that was with de Blasio? That
No,
was
there,
drainage.
so
Trenton
there is
Avenue.
the notice to bidders that we anticipate is for Pennsylvania Avenue Phase 5 drainage improvements.
it's the last phase of the same
It's-
project that
yeah.
had been happening. So
I just wanted to know if we're doing water and sewer, or if it's,
I think they are, because I think it just matches exactly the phases 1 through 4.
but from what I understand, you said we're not going to go with those medians.
Correct, that is
Right.
correct, that is correct. And just for the public's knowledge, we've already started the next 3 blocks on the other side of Pittsburgh Avenue, going down Pennsylvania.
Yes, they're into the second street on that project right now.
And I guess my other question, which I had brought up before, was with it being the Coast Guard base, they're not responsible for any of that roadway?
It's a municipal street going into the entrance of the Coast Guard,
So
where the entrance is, where the
And
guard
I-
is.
Yeah, and I should have asked this question beforehand, I just thought of it as we're sitting here, has to do with water meters there. They're all metered homes there, right? Because why I asked that, if they're metered homes, then I understand why we would be doing water and sewer for that. But if it's not metered, then it should be the base's responsibility for those piping.
I'm sorry, we would need microphones.
So,
We own the street.
right.
The street's our responsibility.
And this is phase 5 of what has been a pretty long project, phases 1 through 4. And the comment that was made that you might not have heard was that there are condos on this section of, frankly, not that it even matters, but there are condos that are residents on the right side of Pennsylvania as you're going
Right,
into the
but-
base.
But that really wouldn't make a difference if it was a county road, because there's, on the county roads, there is housing. But I think, as I'm thinking about this, I'm answering my own question, because I think it's Delaware that's the county road going into the base.
It is.
Right.
Not the Pennsylvania Avenue.
not Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments on this? All right,
I
roll.
just want,
Go
can
ahead.
you just
go ahead.
make clear, Mike, or Lou, are you looking into that, if it's just paving or if it's water and sewer?
We'll definitely check.
Should we know what it is that we're voting on before we vote on this? If it's paving or water and sewer, or?
It's just an advertisement for a bid anyhow.
I'm comfortable with it, given that this is the 5th phase. I'm sure it matches the existing 4.
Well, it doesn't, because we're not doing the
All right,
center,
we can table
the
it.
center, the center,
I was under the
Flower
impression
beds.
that it was going to match the other phases that you
Well,
guys have already
It's not going to match the other
done.
ones, because we're not doing the flower beds in the center.
You
What
want
about
to
6
table
and
it?
7, though?
Huh?
Like phases 6 and 7, I know that's a different
On the other
engineer, but
Phases 1, 2, and 3, I think is when they had the flower beds in the middle of the Coast
Right.
Guard base going down.
right. But
As-
6 and 7 don't, right?
Do you want to table
6
this,
and
or do you
7.
want to,
I think give Lou a little bit more time to find out. if-
I don't think I'm going to find it.
Yeah, we just sidebarred it, and table would be fine to make sure they're completely accurate.
okay? Motion to table?
Second?
You want to make the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, yeah,
I
make
make-
the motion.
A motion to table?
Second.
Go ahead.
Are we tabling indefinitely, council,
Yeah, I think just to the next meeting.
to the next meeting?
Okay, roll call?
Sorry, the motion is to table, Councilmember Baldwin.
But just for the record, before you, I did ask this question to Lou and Mike before the meeting. About 11:30, I sent them an email questioning this resolution.
Just to clarify, the motion is to table this to the next meeting, which is November 1st. Lorraine?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, and I agree with that. Yes.
okay.
Roll call?
Well, Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan.
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager.
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
Okay. And the next resolution is 253-10-2022, a resolution authorizing advertisement for bids for Kiwanis Community Park ADA compliance project.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Questions or comments?
The reason why I pulled this, I understand during the presentation, they had a path going around Kiwanis Park. And it's my understanding that the path has been removed. And I just think
Correct.
that should be pointed out.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I sort of misunderstood that in the beginning. I thought it was added back in, but so now the path on the other side has been removed as an option.
The
It will
original-
not be part of the bid, is what
No,
we're
the
saying.
original design had the path that went around the pond closer to Michigan Avenue.
Yes.
As an ad alternate.
As
We
an
have-
alternate,
When the
right.
cost processes came in, we decided it was best to just move forward with the bid package that was originally presented.
Okay,
And just to clear that for the public, there still is a bike and walking path
That's-
on the basketball court side of the pond, duck pond. So
Right.
going from Madison Avenue to the tennis club or MAC, there'll still be a sidewalk there, just not on the other side of the pond.
right, okay.
Any other questions or comments? I'd just like to add, I just think this is going to be such a nice project to get going. Just a reminder, that we did get it in a $400,000 grant for this, and I think it really is just going to be a beautiful little park. So excited for this one.
Absolutely.
Roll call?
Councilmember Baldwin?
Roll call? Absolutely, yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sheehan?
Yes?
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
All right. Any old business, council?
Any old business? Okay, any new business, city solicitor,
Nothing to add, Mayor, thank you.
city manager,
Nothing, sir.
city clerk?
Just a couple. We have that free rabies clinic coming up here at City Hall. It's going to be down in the basement, lower level, outside of the construction office in the hallway. It's Tuesday, October 25th from 4:30 to 5:30. It's open to anybody in the county. We're not doing licensing there, just rabies, okay? Halloween parade's coming up Sunday, October 23rd at 3 p.m.
Aaron, are you sure about that? Because I thought I went to the website and it said Saturday.
Let me see.
And that's... Is it Sunday? Okay.
Yep. Sunday, October 23rd at 3 p.m. Yeah.
Well, I knew it was Sunday too,
Got it.
but I thought just check the website.
Does it say what Saturday on
I
the
thought it
website?
said-
Okay, I'll talk to Casey. Thank you.
But I thought it was Sunday too, but when I
Yeah.
went to the website to check, and I thought for sure it said Saturday on the website.
No, for sure, we'll double check that. And again, trick or treat night in Cape May is Monday, October 31st from 5 to 8. We've got some movies in the park happening here. We've got October 30th at Rotary Park is Rocky Horror Picture Show. October 28th is the Addams Family. Lots of good stuff going on, so everybody enjoy your spooky season.
Cool. All right, good stuff. We'll open it up now for, oh, I'm sorry, council members. Councilmember Baldwin? Anything to add this evening?
Councilmember Baldwin, any comments for you tonight?
No, I have no comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
We just hope you feel better. All right. Councilmember Meyer?
I don't have much to say. I just want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting on the candidates night last night. And I just want to point out something that, I guess the mayor doesn't always, speaks up himself enough, I guess, about some things. I was thankful that his dad gave me a tour of the St. Mary's in Cape May Point. That was a really amazing event. I thank you for working it, or getting that organized for me. I just think if anybody has any idea what they're doing over there, it's amazing, as a science center and whatnot. And I just think everybody should look into it and become a part of this project. That's all.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Just one short comment. I just want to say I was very pleased with the rendition of the seawall. I like the fact that he kept things to scale, not to throw off the council and the public on what the actual vision or look's going to be. And I think it's very keeping with the environment and the streetscape there.
That's great. Councilman Yeager?
Nothing new from me.
And I just want to thank everyone again on council. It's nice to get this Kiwanis Club Park, the ADA accessibility and all that. I mean, I just thought that presentation too, with all the sensory areas and everything for our kids. Everybody knows the issues that we've been having with Lafayette Street Park, which I will make a comment on that just really quickly too. I know Shane has worked on that for years, and I've worked on bringing my kids there for years now, 8, 6, and 4, and we'd love to see a park there. But I actually wrote down a list of the groups that we're working with on Lafayette Street Park, and so I'll just say them to everybody. DEP, New Jersey DEP, EPA, SHPO, which is State Historic Preservation Office, HPC, Historic Preservation Commission, which has been fine, by the way, but HUD, Cape May Housing Authority, Cape May Board of Education, Cape May County, JCP&L, Jersey Central Power and Light, CAFRA, Green Acres, Blue Acres, and County Open Space. And I have to say, every single one of them is not just a breeze through. It's a lot of detail. And what we're waiting for, as actually the city manager mentioned, is the DEP, the permit, DEP permit. So once we get that, we're ready to roll. We want to do it as quickly as possible and get this done for everyone, believe me. But not getting into the muck on that, but it's very exciting to get Kiwanis Club Park going as quickly as we can and get that open for next summer. So anyway, excited about that.
Mr. Mayor, while we're talking about Lafayette Street Park, it also comes into play Lafayette Street County project. Have we come to a resolution on what's going to happen with the school and the bump-in with the county?
Lafayette Street?
From,
Well, the question's the bump in front of the school, Lafayette Street, on
I mean,
Lafayette Street
I mean, I
paving.
saw the emails going back and forth, and I'm assuming from what I read from them that we're going to be doing that phase first with the bump-in?
Yes, I passed on to council everything that we've heard from Bob Church, so
Yeah, I
he's
know-
doing everything he can to expedite it.
Okay, so does council have to take any other action?
I think they heard you loud and clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mike, for taking care of that.
You know, I just had, I actually had a question, but
Go ahead, go ahead.
did I misread today where I saw that the county approved 25 miles an hour every place on Cape Island?
Yes,
They did.
yes. Lou and I were just
That's-
discussing it.
Great.
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a big deal.
So they're
Yeah,
listening.
that was a request that came from all municipalities too, Cape May
Yes.
Point, West Cape May, and Cape May. So that,
Right.
the good point. That was good news. Okay, we'll open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak? City Clerk, you want to give the,
Come on up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Boyd from 1009 Washington Street, Cape May. You mentioned park. You're talking about Madison Avenue?
correct.
All right, I've sort of been out of touch this past year. So, I don't know what your plans are. We have a lot of flooding there. I am sure you've all seen the pictures. I've spread them all over. There on Washington Street, where we are, Washington and Madison. When we've got three or four storm drains right there, and it still can't carry it off. This time of the year, it's really bad with the leaves, which creates a lot of problem. Also, there is a pipe that runs under their driveway into the pond. It carries all of the dog feces, the leaves, all of the gunk from summer into that pond. And I can't imagine that the EPA would be really happy with it. And you're planning on, or maybe the EPA won't care, I don't know. But you're planning on a park there, but that pond has to be horribly polluted over the years. And plus that pipe that runs under their driveway gets clogged with leaves, which makes the runoff even that much slower. And it's becoming more and more of a problem because when the houses were approved to be built over on the Demarest site, they were one house with a lot of land around it. They approved 2 houses to be put on that lot.
Right.
There's big driveways, concrete, so the water is not being absorbed into the land. It's running down the driveways, and this concrete takes up most of the property, and it's even making the flooding worse. And where it flooded on our side of Washington Street, it's now starting to flood on the other side at the very beginning of the rain. And I really think when you're talking about storm drains, this is something that has never been addressed and we've been hollering about it for years. It floods so bad that their property, almost the entire property floods. It's not good for anybody's foundations. And we don't have ocean problems there.
Right.
We've got rain problems.
Right.
And I would really like someone to think about addressing that situation for us, please.
I
I
would
don't
assume-
know, the water runs around from Lafayette Street all the way around the corner
Right.
and comes down Washington Street, and we're at a low spot, granted. And it creates a problem. It floods across Madison Avenue. Sometimes the flooding gets so bad.
Mrs. Boyd, I'm just going to make sure everybody understands. It's Madison and Washington is where it's flooding, and the water is coming from Lafayette Street down Madison to.
Around the corner, correct.
And then
Correct.
How many houses up is it flooding up Washington as you're leaving town? Like,
Well, from, I know it flood toward town, or toward the landing.
directions? I just want to try to give everybody a conception on how many.
All right,
Washington grades towards town to three houses. I'm sorry, it comes down, it grades from Washington.
You just say your name and address.
Sure, I'm Kevin Hammer, and I'm at 1010 Washington, directly across the street from Mrs. Boyd. So Washington grades from like the direction of the Wawa towards downtown, comes down, it sort of bellies out at my address. I'm the third house from Madison, as is Mrs. Boyd. It goes up slightly to Madison, and then Madison, I think, grades down towards the ocean, if I'm not mistaken. So what happens is anything coming down Washington collects there in front of our house. There's a drain on each side of the road there. The drain connects over to the pond in the Kiwanis Park. You know, if the water is running from Lafayette down Madison, some of it will come down, and you know, you can see when it rains really heavily, the water can be a foot deep on Washington there.
Sure that drain goes into the pond and not out to the.
oh, no, it goes, I remember them digging up their driveway and putting the pipe in.
That was the previous owner, the Craigs, I think it was.
That was under Dr. Mahaney's tenure as mayor.
Why I was saying is because that might be something we talked to Eric Krasinski about.
Yeah.
He handles the drain.
Clearing it.
And see if he can go in there and clean it out or whatever. But I think you're also in that, right at that intersection, there was a water issue with one of the water lines or pipes, wasn't there? That they were having that the.
They've come in a number of times and put new drains in, but all it does, it is nothing. Like I said, this time of the year it's leaves. And if, I know one thing for sure, the day my hearse goes down Washington Street, that tree that I've cursed so many times it will laugh at me. Because it's going to outlive me.
Because I also think that we have to address the issue that the water's coming from Lafayette Street.
It's coming down Washington, Lafayette, and
If you could get the water to drain on Lafayette Street, then at least you wouldn't get their runoff into your.
That's true.
And there is a drain right at the corner of Washington and Madison, but it's very insufficient. And usually that's plugged up. I mean, I rarely recall them even being cleaned out. They have come and cleaned out the ones in front of my house.
We will talk to Eric, and Eric can.
We can stop over tomorrow and really look at this in the field where we can get a better idea of what everybody's talking about. So if you're around tomorrow morning, Director Brzezinski and myself will come by and you can show us everything that you've just described.
Sure. You
Isn't-
can actually see the leaves that are clogged up on the drain.
We'll make sure they suck them out.
Yeah.
One of the
They don't do that routinely.
Yes.
I mean, I have to say that. And, you know, there's parking on that side of the street, the Lafayette side of Washington. There's not on the other. That drain tends to stay fairly clean, but the one on the parking side, it clogs up all over.
Our leaf truck is out of service right now, and the backup is rusted through. So, but we'll come up with a solution tomorrow.
Yeah, the other thing, just as an aside, kind of related to this, was, you know, I called DPW actually when we saw that was really the first time since I've been a permanent resident here. I came here in June. I've been in the House since 2016, but I've just retired this year from my business career. So anyway, I called them to say, there's a lot of flooding out there, and you better do something on Washington to restrict traffic, because when the cars go through there, they could easily lose control, hit the parked cars, hit a tree, whatever.
A big wig.
Yeah, I just don't want to, it was more of a public safety issue. And he said, well, part of the problem is the pumps don't keep up with the water. And I wasn't even aware that there was a pump. I thought it was a gravity feed from that drain to the pond, and then maybe a pump or something from there. DPW couldn't answer the question, so I don't know whether they don't know where the pumps are or what they cover or what, but that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I just would say I don't know how the pumping works. I will say once the rain stopped, the drain emptied out fairly quickly within a half hour. So there must be some kind of a pumping system going. I can't imagine that's just gravity fed.
Yeah, I would say though, this is actually a good meeting that you came to, because the good news is the Lafayette Street project, one of the main reasons they tell us that it's going to take as long as it is the amount of drainage work that they keep talking about. And I know part of that specifically is on Madison Avenue in Lafayette. So they are aware of the water that's coming down. So that's number one. Now that project is next year, but that's where we're at. Then, obviously, you heard tonight, we did the study at Elmira Street and a couple other streets. We're going to continue that study throughout town, so maybe this would be a good candidate for the next stormwater management study. And also, because you said the two new houses,
That's something that needs to be addressed when we allow building.
right.
How big and wide these driveways are, and how much the rain is not soaked into the ground.
So that ordinance that we introduced tonight is specifically about stormwater management on properties. Sadly, it's too late for this one, but we know that this is an issue throughout town. So that's one thing we're trying to correct. But in any event, I know Deputy City Manager will be there tomorrow, and we will do what we can. And then again, I think maybe it would be a good, because I've seen the water there between Madison and Michigan too, where we've seen that. So maybe that area would be a good second
When the pond
study.
overflows, I've noticed you get water now there, Madison Avenue, where it overflows.
Yes.
And which is creating more of a problem.
Good.
So, I would appreciate it. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. And now, see, when my husband was living, I wouldn't come up and say that.
Thank you, Mrs. Boyd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
Any other, please, sir.
Just a quick question about the Kiwanis Park. Was there a reason not to do the walking track around the pond? I was just curious. I think that was really a wonderful idea.
So we originally did it as an alternate, but one of the reasons for that was budgetary, to see how much it would come in as a cost. But the second reason was we got, to be blunt, a bit of a mixed response from some of the folks on Michigan on the other side of the pond. So to be blunt, we were kind of looking at a project that had universal support throughout town other than some of the complaints that we received. So our thought was, okay, take it off. And we have the design in place if we wanted to look at it at a later date or whatever, but give the folks on Michigan Avenue a real chance to look at it and thoroughly examine it if we were to do it again. That was our thought process.
I just think it's a nice thing for.
Well, the one thing that was nice about it too, I gotta say, was it was almost exactly a quarter mile. So for walking, it was kind of a neat.
Yeah,
Not that any of us are timing
and
ourselves or
it's
anything,
off the
but
streets and away from traffic.
But I did understand their concern of constant skateboarding around it
I do.
and
I hear that.
their privacy, people not knowing where the city's property ends and theirs begins.
we were trying to see if we could get one project by with unanimous approval. I do, yeah. Yeah. I don't remember. I do know. Any other? What do they call that? Lake. Lake.
It was called a swamp.
Yeah. Okay. Any other public comment this evening?
Hi, Justine, also from Washington Street, also here with environmental news, but of the celebratory nature. I had the pleasure of attending the ANJAC Annual Congress on Friday, and our mayor was announced as the winner of the Municipal Leadership Award for his comprehensive support of environmental initiatives. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. But I
You
will say
were-
that was because of this council for certain. And I know the work of the Environmental Commission, so.
It was great. You were the only mayor to receive the award this year and be invited into the mayoral honorary circle.
That's really cool.
This also means that Cape May is the only municipality to win 2 awards this year.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Thank you for your hard work on that. Yeah. In all seriousness, to council, I mean, it's nice to get those awards, but it represents the work of this entire council, so I appreciate that. Anyone else? Mr. Roush? And thank you, Justine, too, for, by the way, went up to Mercer County and represented the city and the Environmental Commission, so thank you very much. And has not submitted a bill to the taxpayers of Cape May either, so.
Jules Rouse, 1010 New York Avenue. The resolution 485, 2022, how long before this new regulation will go into effect where the drainage for individual properties is going to have to meet some standards?
Mr. Solicitor?
It's a matter of timing for second reading and adoption, and
City Clerk?
So it could be as early as December 13th, or it may be a few weeks after that. I actually need to check with the planning board to see what their schedule is, to make sure. They technically have 35 days to review it, but if they can fit it in under this schedule, I would like for it to be back here in a month, on November 14th for second reading. If that's the case and it's adopted, it would be effective December 13th. But I have to confirm with the planning board that that works with their meeting schedule as well, because they have 35 days to
Yeah,
review it.
I would like to encourage the community to see this move forward with some dispatch, frankly, because we're seeing a number of new houses being built that are occupying as much property as they can. And at this point, there's really little, if no regard whatsoever for drainage on the adjoining property. The second question, part of the question is, will this also apply to people putting swimming pools in?
yes, it applies to all development. So if you put a garage in, if you put a pool in, you're going to have to count for stormwater management and drainage as part of the application process, whether you go to the board or not.
And I think frankly, specifically pools, because as we all know, pools do cause an issue in regards to drainage, and so they're going to have to make that part of the plan.
That's absolutely the case. And it's becoming an increasing problem because we're increasing the number of pools. And I think the council may want to look at the way that we figure the calculations for the amount of occupancy of a land. When it deals with a swimming pool, we've got a circumstance with a pool going in at Madison, 200 Madison Avenue, where they've got 3 big recreational areas around the pool surface, but because they're using pavers, it doesn't really have any impact of any great extent. So as we cover more and more land, we're creating more and more problems. And I think it might be well to look at those percentages of coverage. Thank you.
I'll just add to what you just said. Just so council knows for discussion, I know West Cape May is considering 150% for pools. So actually over 100%. And it may, I don't know what they'll be on, maybe it's 120 or whatever. But the point, of course, there is, let's minimize the size of the pools, or you're going to have to make your home a little bit smaller or whatever if you're trying to maximize your 40% coverage or whatever. So I just mentioned that to council as this is an issue on the island of Cape May, and West Cape May Point has already taken action on pools, and it is also a concern for our water consumption, no doubt. So it's something we need to talk about.
I guess a technical question. At what point does the property owner become obligated to meet this requirement? Is it before they get a building permit, after they get a building permit, or after they get or before they get an occupancy permit?
All the above. I mean, it starts with the zoning permit. So take a pool for an example. I'd like to put a pool in my backyard. I'd like to go, you get the plan, you get the concept, you go to the zoning office and they say, looks like a nice development. You don't have to go to the zoning board, but you do have to go through our stormwater management and minimum grading requirements. So I need a $500 escrow, need an application fee, and I need a plan, and I need to know what you're gonna do about the proposed drainage. And to collect stormwater management, meet the standards that are in here that have been crafted by, in coordination with our city engineer. So that process, they build pursuant to a plan that goes through that review process, and at the end of it, before the issuance of a CO, we want to make sure that the as-built matches what they proposed. So, and I'll add that there's no, that's to capture the new applications, but if there are conditions that are not new conditions, like a new application would 100% fall under this process after it's adopted and is adopted pursuant to Title 40. But if there are conditions right now that are causing a nuisance condition, in the opinion of the code enforcement officer or the zoning official, if they see probable cause to see a nuisance condition caused by grading conditions that are improperly directing stormwater, this provides another avenue, not just through the application process, but provides an enforcement mechanism for that too. So I wanted to point that out too, that to the extent a developer kind of like, there's no, you're not allowed to maintain a nuisance condition under this code. That's baseline. If you do new development, you have to follow a strict procedure process to get your permit, get your CO, and to comply with stormwater management and drainage requirements. But this, at its baseline, regulates nuisance conditions. So if there's something floating out there creating an issue, this also provides an enforcement mechanism, whether somebody's proposing to build something or not. So now, that's up to the zoning officer and code enforcement to enforce that reasonably. But I just wanted to point that out, too, that in terms of your original question was timing, like, oh, how soon can we get this? My point is, if somebody builds a building right now and is not technically required to go through this process that we're creating, and at the end of that, what they built is causing a nuisance condition, well, that's regulated here, too. And it directs them through that process to come into compliance, so that they're avoiding a nuisance condition. But there's no, you missed the timeline, I don't have to comply
Okay.
with this.
I think that's equally important.
Well, I think that's what you were getting
Yeah.
at. So I wanted to point that out. I think it's important for developers to know that, too. It's not like, hey, I started building, I don't have to worry about if I'm causing a problem for my neighbor. You should start worrying about that now, because that's what council is proposing to do here.
Right.
Thank you. I think this is
Thank you.
an excellent move forward.
Good. Thank you. Any other public comment? Yeah.
You have to go to the mic.
Thank you.
The houses on the Demers property at Washington Street, we used to have a rather strict lot coverage, but those houses are this far apart. I notice more and more all of the time, houses are being built on more land than it appears that they should be.
It's my understanding that they got that approved through the Planning and Zoning Board to be on those undersized lots.
A variance.
Very,
They were granted a variance for that.
And you know, that's harmful to the city. It might be nice for the people that wind up buying them, I guess, less grass to cut. However, it's not good for the city to not observe your own lot coverage rules and regulations. And I think that my personal opinion is that we need to pay more attention to it and be a little bit more demanding.
I hear you. Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Boyd. Any other public comment? Okay, it's 8 o'clock and the Phillies start at 8:03. So have
We have a,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you. Time is 8 o'clock.
I'm going to keep you all here.